Hello, members, subscribers, and guests of the channel. My name is Yuri. If you are a returning member or subscriber, welcome back. If you're a new viewer, welcome to my channel. First things first, happy Father's Day. Today is a special day, so let's make sure we celebrate all the fathers out there and all the wonderful things that they do for us, for all the families, for all the kids. And I certainly miss my father. My stepdad passed, some of you know, passed last August. And I definitely think of him every day and miss him very, very much. So I hope he's in a better place and watching down. So I miss you, Dad, and I love you. So today, I'm actually chatting with a friend of mine who's also from another country. This is going to be an interesting conversation because my friend was actually living or had a chance to live in 3 different countries. And so we'll have a conversation today. Be sure to all of you who are watching live to engage with us. Leave your comments, leave your questions. I'll be featuring your comments and questions during this talk. And then, of course, remember to smash the like button. All of the new viewers, if you are liking the content, consider to subscribe to this channel and smash the bell in order to receive notifications for all the future videos and live shows. So with that being said, I am going to bring my today's live guest. His name is Farhan. How are you, sir?
Hey Yuri, how's it going?
It's going well. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this.
Oh,
I'm looking
absolutely, my
forward to
pleasure.
this. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation. So I've
Absolutely.
known you for about a year, give or
Right.
take,
Uh-huh.
and I know I've had a couple conversations with you about different cultures and your experiences. And I wanted to do this because I wanted to learn more. I'm curious about, the life in other cultures, life in other countries, I mean, and the difference between those other countries in US and your experiences, your personal experiences. So I guess to start things off, like, oh, where were you born and what it was like growing up there?
Sure thing. And back to your point, we did have a lot of interesting conversations about different cultures, right about that one. So I'll go ahead and give you a quick background of myself at where I come from. So I am an Indian citizen. So I was born in India, the southern part of India, one of the southernmost states called Kerala. I know it might be hard to hold on to these Indian names, but I'm just gonna say it anyways. And then, by a very young age, about when I was, I think, few months old, I moved, or my family moved to Qatar, which is in the Middle East. For those who are not familiar with the country, it's one of those another oil-rich countries which is close to Dubai. I'm pretty sure everyone's heard of Dubai, so that's why I use that as a reference every time I talk about Qatar. It's an easy way to explain to somebody where Qatar is situated. So, and then I moved to Qatar. I grew up there up until I was 18. I moved back to India for doing my bachelor's degree in civil engineering. I stayed there for another 4 years, moved back to Qatar, worked for 2 years, and then I was like, okay, I need to get my master's. I need a change of environment, and I always dreamt about coming to the US. It's been a dream of mine since I was a kid, and I decided to apply to a university. Moved to Florida in 2015, and I have been here ever since. I graduated from UF with my master's, and then I started working in Orlando, and I've been in Orlando for almost 5 years now. But that's kind of my story about how I moved, in 3 different countries, and lots of interesting experiences and people that I've met along the way. Still meeting, still learning. I'm in a country. 7 years is not a long time. It's I mean it depends on how you look at it, but on in terms of how much I have to learn about the US or how much more there is to learn, I think I have a long way to go.
So born in India, went to
Right.
Qatar super young. You said 8 month, right?
Yeah, I think it was like right as soon as I was out of the hospital and like ready to fly, flew right back. So I was conceived in Qatar, but so before most of these so I was born. I don't mind my saying my age, but when in back in 1990, there was not a lot of infrastructure in the Middle East, right? They
Hmm.
are slowly becoming oil rich. They didn't have these flashy new hotels and buildings back then, and my dad thought that we had better healthcare in India at that point. So I'd gone back to India, and after the delivery process, once my mom and I was healthy enough for travel, we came back to Qatar.
Yeah. So and then when you afterwards you went back to India to study, and then afterwards you came to United States, right? That's the right timeline.
Yeah, yeah, that's the right timeline. And I
Okay.
think that 4 years that I was in India was where I actually really experienced India to its true sense. I used to keep visiting India like on family vacations, like once a year. We used to travel back to India for a month or 3 weeks or so to meet my family. But it used to be so isolated. I would go meet my family. It's just people who I know around. People I'm around people who I know. I'm very comfortable in that scenario. It's not like I engaged outside that safe environment.
Right.
Well, once I moved for my bachelor's degree, and you know this, right? Like even over here, I'm pretty sure it's the same. When you go to university, that's when you kind of self-discover, and also, you don't have the protective shell around you that your parents give you when you stay with them.
Hmm.
And those 4 years is when I kind of experienced the essence of India, so as to speak. And it's been a wonderful experience, and I'm sure we'll get more into that as we progress in the talk.
Yeah, so I've never been to either one of those countries. I've never been to Qatar. I've never been to India. So would you just describe both of them kind of to someone like myself who've never visited either one of those countries? Like, what's some of the interesting things that you've experienced in Qatar, and what's some of the things that you've experienced in India? How would you just kind of summarize what these countries are, or at least what these countries have been to you?
Okay. So I'm trying to kind of gather myself on how to attack this, because it might be a detailed response, and I hope your viewers are okay with that. So just to give you a little bit of history, right? So when people say Middle East, like, a lot of things comes to the mind. You might think about like the rich flashy Arabs and their
Hmm.
Lamborghinis, and then you think about the war torn part of it, like, where, Iraq or Iran or Egypt, those areas, which is slightly conflicted, to say. And also, I just want to give the disclaimer: the views that I express here is from my own experience. I don't want to generalize and, offend
Of
anybody. It's
course.
just what I've experienced, right? So I grew up in the oil rich part, or the OPEC countries, so as they call it. It's like 6 nations that are like clubbed together, all of them pretty oil rich. That includes Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Oman, Bahrain, Qatar, and UAE. And Dubai is actually one of the states inside UAE. So I grew up there, and these countries, uh, back in 1990, I would say they were still very strict, very Islamic, very very conservative in nature, and they were just, beginning to get rich. And this is, before the internet, right? So they haven't been exposed to Western cultures yet. So I would say at least the first. Just looking at all the comments. Hi everyone. So just I'm sorry, I was lost my train of thoughts. Oh, okay, yeah. So back in the 1990s, it was the pre-internet. They still had a lot of Western influence in terms of people coming over from Europe and United States to work in these oil-rich countries, because they are still, getting familiar with the oil rigging technology. So they would still have to bring in engineers from UK, different parts of Europe, even Russia, Venezuela,
Hmm.
because these Russia and Venezuela were also had pretty prominent oil rigging technology. So they would bring engineers from there, a lot of engineers from the United States. So they had some influence to it, but it's not as widespread as to when internet came through. So I would say the first 6 to 7 years when I was growing up there, there was not a lot happening. It was very Islamic, very very mechanical nature. Only thing that people used to enjoy was just, eating good food, going out to the parks, coming back home. It's very hot outside, so you don't have a lot of outdoor activities, and social activities would be I would say, was confined to going to the mall or going to the movies once in a while, and
Mhm.
that was it, right? There was not a lot of leisure activities, so as to say. But I'd say 96, 97, and going forward, these countries realize that, okay, we have money, we can build the infrastructure, we can we can attract tourists, we can, it could be a luxury holiday destination like Dubai, and they started progressing in that way. And once they started progressing in those ways, things started opening up. There was more leisure activities to do. You could go hang out, with your friends in a lot of, at beaches, a lot of different parks, or just go into cafes. Like, it started getting pretty westernized as we go. So if you go to Dubai right now in 2022, it's almost like a very modern Western society. There are
Mhm.
parts of it which is still secluded, in which they want to preserve their Islamic heritage, where you would still have to, if you're a woman, you still have to be moderately, modestly dressed in those areas. But there's also, for the most part, in if you go to Dubai, there are no restrictions on what you can wear, or you could go to a pub and have a drink. So they've opened up. They want people to come in. So it's been a stark difference. Like, if you look at the way these six countries progressed over 1990 to 2020, this 40-year span, it's been a massive difference on how that culture progressed, right? And also, for a matter of fact, these are young countries. They only got their independence in the 1960s and forward.
Mhm.
But so in terms of a progressive scale on how they moved from conservative to a more progressive society, it's been a pretty fast movement for them. It's usually countries, it takes a while for them to, for the moral needle to move towards the progressive side. So I and for in terms of facilities, it's all first world. You have, great hospitals and schools. So I grew up in a pretty first world environment in those countries. And once I was 18, I moved to India. Now, it's a stark difference in India, right? India is, sometimes I refer to it as bipolar, is because you have parts of India which are very modern, people with modern outlook, very Western outlook, very well read, a lot of smart people, a lot of smart engineers, doctors, all that. But those are mostly secluded to the cities. So you have the cities of India, which are pretty modern, pretty westernized. They really look up to the Western culture, very admired by it, very fascinated by it. But then, as soon as you step outside the outskirts, then you kind of feel the real essence of India, right? And I'm not saying this to offend anyone, but there is a lot of poverty in India, and there's also a lot of culture. There's a lot of great food, uh, but it was a stark difference for me, like moving, like taking myself out of a first world country and just dropping me in the middle of India, which was which had a lot more to develop. And but when you go to the cities, like I mentioned, you kind of fit in pretty quick, because those, you have internet there, you have development there, and you kind of get your first world experience in a third world country. But as soon as you move out, it's back to pretty conservative, pretty old, poverty-ridden areas. Things are changing. I would say things are changing, but still has a long way to go. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful about, like, the future of India, but that's how it is. And in terms of culture, India is still a conservative country. Um, but I would say the moral needle still, move towards the progressive side. Eventually, it's going to happen. But for the most part, they are still very close to their culture. It's not super westernized. And I'm speaking about the majority. Some people might say that, oh, no, India is modern. Yes, India is modern in those 6 to 7 big cities that they have. But if you take India as a whole, in my opinion, I would still call it a conservative country, which is deep rooted in its culture, and but it's learning, it's changing.
Thank you for sharing that. So it looks like we have a question from Joe. Did you experience any discrimination in Arabia as a Southeast Asian? I remember you were telling me something about it before, like work. I think you were talking about working in Qatar, right?
Right.
and
Yeah.
how like the pay wasn't uneven. Is it something that you can share?
Yeah, absolutely. I hope I don't offend anyone, but yes, I definitely did. And the funny part was like when I was growing up in Qatar, I never experienced it because I was growing up in a bubble, right? So just to give context to people who are on the show, these Middle Eastern countries have very little indigenous population, right? The whole population, for example, of Qatar is I think close to 2.5 million people in total. That's it. And 2.5, and out of 2.5 million, only 400,000 or so are actual Qataris, right? So the rest 2.2 million are immigrants, and these immigrants are mostly from Southeast Asia, like India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Nepal. And now we also have some workforce coming in from the Philippines, Indonesia. We also have coming from there. And recently, I also heard that there are a lot of Eastern European countries like Romania, Bulgaria. We are also having people coming from there. But the fact is that there is big racial discrimination against Southeast Asians, I would say, in these Middle Eastern countries. And my dad never told me that he had to experience that, right? Like, I did not know while growing up that my dad was only making half the money, and so as to somebody from Arab or United States or UK would make. And it felt very odd for me because I thought, okay, they were just discriminating all immigrants, but that wasn't there. Like they would be very nice, and they would take very well, good care of immigrants that come from Europe or the Americas, but they wouldn't treat the same way. They would see immigrants from the Southeast Asian countries as the blue collar force or the labor force. Uh, and yes, a lot of the blue collar jobs or the labor force did come from those countries, but there were also very successful Southeast Asian people working in the Middle East, right? And so I never experienced that. But when I had gone back, going back to my story, once I finished my bachelor's degree and went back to Qatar, and I was working there for 2 years, that's when I experienced it. I was like, oh wow, like I did not know that it was kind of this bad, right? And I thought that I was getting paid well because I was always comparing the money that I was making in India versus what I was making in Qatar. So I thought like, oh, I'm making good. I'm making a decent amount of money. But once I came to know how much my English British counterpart was making, I was like, wait, same amount of work. Maybe I even work harder. Maybe I might be the same amount of skills, but you're getting three times what I'm getting paid. I was kind of dumbfounded, and even the way they talk to you, it's a little demeaning. And there has been a lot of attention that's been brought to this because Qatar is the next host of the FIFA 2022 World Cup, which is happening in November, right? And because of that, things have changed. So it's a good thing that, like, I would say that this limelight fell on Qatar, and they started doing a lot of things to kind of safeguard the rights of these immigrant workers who come there. But I'm sorry for the long answer, Joe. But the to answer your question, yes, there is discrimination in Arabia, but there's also been a huge shift because of the media limelight that has fallen on them because of FIFA. Things have changed. Lot more way to go. There's a lot more that needs to be changed, but things have at least started ticking in the right direction.
Discrimination that happened during that time. I thought you mentioned that someone from Great Britain was making more than you. Did I understand you correctly, or was
Yeah,
it that?
yeah.
So they basically would so it's almost like double discrimination in a way because they would pay more. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but they would pay more amount of money to like a immigrant with a different skin color, and they would pay more to people who were natives or Qatar, but not people of East Asia.
That is exactly correct. And there was also, uh, I mean, you hit that right on. But to add to your point, I believe like the natives who are actually Qataris, even though they have lack of skills, they get elected into positions, or they get placed into positions in government positions, even when they don't have the right skill to do it, right? So, and this is my personal experience about what happened with my father, who recently, in back in 2020, lost his job, and for a company that he's been working for over 25 years, right? And things are better now, but back then, and you might think that okay, 2020 it might be because of COVID, but that's not what it was. Is it's called something called Qatarization, and every OPEC country like Saudi or Bahrain, Kuwait has some form of this Qatarization, where what they do is people who's been working in like government positions, like such as my dad, they send Qataris to shadow my dad, and they ask my dad to teach him for the next 4 months, so that he can be replaced by this Qatari person who has no experience to do this role, right? And my dad, who's been working in that position for 20 years, that wealth of experience, he's supposed to teach somebody who's been working in that position for maybe 4 months. And funny enough, what actually happens is my dad teaches this guy. This guy gets promoted into that, the big position that my dad was in. Now my dad works under him, but the but the fact was that, once the person moves into my dad's position, he doesn't really do any work, right? He
Mm,
just sits there, plays on his phone, and this is a personal experience, but I've heard it many times. I don't want to generalize it, but it sure seems that way. Like, when a lot of these people come in and they take up this position, and you work under him for a lower pay, but you still have to do all the work of the other person and yourself, right? So that, even that, there's not enough limelight brought to this, but that is what's been happening.
yeah, that is very interesting, and it kind of brings different type of perspective to adapt to, I guess, individuals who are living in the free Western countries. When I say free, at least where maybe we experiencing less discrimination of that source, and we have laws that is enforced by our employers and by some of the governments in these Western countries that prevent that from happening. So I think when I hear you say these things, it makes me feel as if, kind of grateful that, for example, in the United States, you know, maybe it exists, but not to the same extent, not openly like this,
Yeah,
and to
yeah.
where there's some protections that set in place.
Right, right, and there is an acceptance that there is something wrong. Like, in the Middle East, like my dad still doesn't think this is wrong. Like, he's like, oh, it's okay. I'm lucky that I still got to work all these years over here and make more money than I would have made in India. And I'm like, gosh, you're not getting the point. They're still being ridiculous. They're not treating you equal. Like,
Mhm.
but sometimes when you're in that system, even when you're discriminated, sometimes you just don't see it, right? And I was able to vividly see it, like the extent of it, once I came here, and I started getting a response for the work that I did, not the color of my skin, not the way I speak, not my accent, not the way I look. It was my knowledge and my work that I did, that I got respect for when I started working in the United States. And I had my conversation with my mom and dad about like how we lived all these years thinking that, oh, it's a blessing, it's been living there, but it really is not, right? So, and I saw an interesting comment from I don't want to butcher the name, but Eunice the World, about her
This
friend
one?
had, yeah, yeah, about how they moved to Qatar and how they had a different life. And that's the stark difference between people who come from Europe versus people who are from Southeast Asia. But I'm glad that there is an awareness out there. Like, I'm glad that your audience asked this question about Southeast Asia and the discrimination. So I'm glad that there is awareness, and that people are actually seeing this. Yeah, but all in all, I'm grateful for my time and experience that I gained in the country. For me, it's still home because that's where I grew up, right?
Right.
And every good memory as a kid, it's still attached to that country. So I still love Qatar, but that doesn't mean I can't say what's wrong with it, right? So
Of course.
yeah, so I hope it changes for the good. But to speak the truth, there is discrimination. Changes need to be made, and all people should be treated equal.
What about India? So you went to school there for 4 years, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, I believe you still remember your experience there. What give me like a kind of your regular day, maybe a day of the week. What was it like? What things you were doing? Like obviously you would go to school, but I would like to hear like what your life was in India as a student. Can you describe it? Like maybe take a day or two and what it was like.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So India. So when I grew up in Qatar, right, for the most part, it was very controlled life, I would say, because I would get up in the morning, 6 a.m., catch the bus to school. I'd be back at 2 a.m. Right, drops off right in front of my apartment. Walk back into my home, and then mostly I would be inside the house. Sometimes you go get to meet your friends or play, have playtime in their apartments, that sort of thing. And then I was just waiting to get out of it, right? So India was my trump card to freedom, right? So as soon as I moved to India, um, and my dad dropped me at the dorm of my university,
Yeah.
and he left, right? And for a second, I was like, "Oh God, I am so screwed," right? There is the bed is like small tiny bed, and the tiles are like broken, there is like paint peeling off, and then I'm like, oh god, like how am I going to fit in, right? And but these are like I went to one of the top universities in India. Like the quality of education is good, but the infrastructure is like bad, right? And then there is I'm sorry, getting a call. Okay, there were cows that were walking back and forth in my university, and like I was like, um, gosh, this is a serious culture shock. And the funny part was, like, I went to the restroom in the morning and there was no water, right? And then I was like, oh god. And then I remember that first day at school, like, where me and my friends, and there were a bunch of friends who had moved from the Middle East to this university, just because the university was still pretty good, and people would still go there for that level of education, because once you graduate you have that tag of, oh, you're a graduate from so and so National Institute of Technology in India. So it still was worth that experience. But then I went there, and then I remember holding a bucket in front of like a hand pump to fill that bucket up so that I could take a shower, and then go back to the restroom to take a shower. And the first week I was like, God, I'm just gonna call my dad, and I'm gonna be like, hey, listen, I just don't want to be here. You need to take me back to Qatar. I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe I might do from like Qatar had universities back then. They had American universities branches in Qatar, but it was extremely costly to do those educations, and that's one reason I went to India to do it. And I was like, I don't know, I'll do some certification, I'll do something, but I am not ready for this. But it changed when you have 5 or 6 people going through the same thing and who can kind of empathize with each other. You build a bond with them, and I
Hmm.
made some really good friends, like 6 or 7 of them. And and after that, once you have that brotherhood and sisterhood, all that come together, then it just became a great experience moving forward. And to answer your question, it would be, I would get up in the it's just like an American university, to give you a comparison, but with way worse infrastructure, right? You'd wake up, when it's time for your classes, you would go to the university, you take your classes, come back, but in a much less fancier way. I mean, I know for you to picture, if you think about University of Florida, you would wake up in your dorm, go to classes, same thing, but I guess just with a lot of brown-looking people like me.
Right, right.
Yeah.
All right, so it looks like we have a question from Sam. Do you think that having the World Cup in Qatar is sports or washing, using sport to divert attention from the country's problems?
Okay, it is a loaded question, but I politics is also one of my hobbies to read about. Um, I know they talk about sports washing, but what we have to understand is that these countries, if you look at the moral scales about, like, say, for Western countries or European countries, right? You look at the age of these countries. Us, United States of America, is 250 years old, right? And I think equal civil rights only came to this country maybe 50 years back. That means, in the grand scale of the age of the country, that is still pretty recent, right? It took a while for these countries to understand what is right, give rights for women to vote, give rights for black people to vote. It was a long time. It took a long time for even a very progressive country for United States to get to that level. So when you and I know once we have the moral upper hand, we can look down at countries, especially in the Middle East, and be like, oh, look how regressive they are. But the fact is that they have been ticking towards a progressive model, even though there's a lot more work need to be done. I'm not saying that they're perfect. There's so much more work to be done, but they're kind of moving their needles, right, in at a much faster rate, right? So yeah, we can if you look at it, yes, it is sports washing, right? They're using all the sports as tourism for people to think that what this country looks like, but they still have all those hidden, regressive issues within those countries in terms of treating their women, women's rights, immigrant rights, racism. They have all that issues, like, and they have their religious issues as well. But I don't want it to be just looking at them as this, oh, these rich countries, they just want to sports wash and they just want to keep doing the bad stuff that they keep doing. But I think that would paint a wrong picture, because of these countries trying to host these international events. Like Dubai, they just hosted the 2020 World Expo. People from all around the world is coming there. Because of that, because they want to open up to the world, they are changing from within, right? They are exposed to these Western liberal
Mhm.
worlds, and they want to understand what is it that we are doing wrong, how to fix the issues. And even the limelight that they get from Western countries, saying that, oh, you're wrong, you don't have rights for gay people, you don't have rights for your LGBTQ community. All these are being brought into the limelight, and they are having to change from within. Granted, the change is slow, but it is happening, right? So all these sports events or big expos that these rich Middle Eastern countries are doing is forcing them to change and be more like a modern, progressive society. So I wouldn't. I feel like when people use the term sports washing, uh, it has a very negative connotation to it, right? And there is some truth to it, but I support the fact that these countries are going out there trying to host these international events, because that is driving a change which is helping the citizens and the immigrants and the women and the LGBTQ community of those countries. So I would think of it as a positive thing, and I would think that they should, keep going with it, be the change that you want to see in the world, right?
Well, when when you think about it, when I think about this, it seems like it helps with globalization, because anytime
Yeah,
that you bring, an international event such as World Cup, I mean, it's the second largest event after Olympics, I believe, in the world, right?
exactly.
So this is going to impact your country in a major way.
Hmm.
And if it's done out of pure intentions, because there could be some political agendas, right, that
Hmm.
some people may have, but if it's done out of pure intentions, and if country does it for the right reasons, it should really kind of catapult the country, or help country to get to the next level, because it impacts economy, it impacts culture, it creates connections, it has so many benefits for the country.
Exactly, and it's also an opportunity for people, in the West and in Europe, to kind of learn and understand their culture as well, right? Because I've also seen a trend where somewhere, or I wouldn't say just United States, but at least in the progressive West, as we call it, that they would look at these countries and be like, oh, that's wrong, can't accept, that's not, yeah, that's not the way to do it. But I think we should understand the difference in culture, right? Like Middle East or India has a different culture than United States. They have their own rights and wrongs. Okay, there are some obvious wrongs that we should call out. But I remember when the country got the host when got the opportunity to host the World Cup. One of the issues that was being brought up was um, alcohol not being served in the in Qatar, right? And I personally didn't want to see that as an issue, right? Because football, or like soccer, is a world sport, right?
Hmm.
It is enjoyed in throughout the world. How just as much as Europeans love it or the Americans love it, so does the Middle Easterns or other Muslim countries. They love it, right? And I know in America or in Europe, people enjoy it with beer, and it's like a festival. When you see each games, it's kind of different the way it's enjoyed in the Middle East. And I think we should take that opportunity to see how these people watch the game when they go there, instead of complaining that, gosh, like this sucks, I don't want to watch a game without alcohol and I don't want to go there. But the fact is that they actually adhere to it. They said that, okay, we will sell alcohol in selective places. So if somebody's planning to go to Qatar to watch the World Cup, you will get alcohol. Don't worry about that. But I'm saying that it should be a cross experience, right? Like should there are some benefits that these countries have come benefited from not having open availability to alcohol. There is Qatar, UAE, Kuwait. These countries have one of the lowest crime rates in the world. They have one of the lowest women batteries in the world. Uh, so there have been some benefits. You get to experience that side of it. You're going to a country that doesn't serve alcohol. You're going to a Muslim country. What was their culture? What was their history like? What is wrong with them? What is right with them? So you get to experience that as well. So there should be exchange of ideas both way, and we shouldn't, we as the West, I call myself West now because I kind of identify with this culture more than I did with Qatar's, uh, should be able to kind of learn and embrace that the Middle Eastern or the Southeast Asian cultures, than always look at them as like, oh, bad people, they need to change.
So you are in India, you are finish up your school,
Yeah.
and then you decide to come to US.
Right.
What sparked the desire at first for you to move to United States of America?
The biggest spark was the discrimination, I would say. It's the discrimination. And when I left India to come back to Qatar, in India, I experienced what, I was an Indian in India. Like, I didn't have to face discrimination over there. I loved the freedom, right? I missed make and I am not ashamed to admit this, but I wanted to make money. I wanted to be rich. I wanted to use my education, get money. And I just felt like India at that point was either too competitive, or I wasn't competitive enough, or it just wasn't giving me the avenue. And I felt like if I come to the Middle East, which was where I grew up, and I have my family and friends who can support me there, I would have easier access to become successful. But once I started working was when I realized that, okay, maybe not as rosy as I thought it was. And then I was answering to people who I did not respect in terms of knowledge or experience. And I was like, I don't want to go through this. I want to get more education. I always dreamt about coming to the United States. My parents were supportive of it. And I just, decided to just push the button to make that move. And best decision of my life, I would say.
At the time, you got your bachelor degree from India, and
Yeah.
then you applied to go to master's degree. So then you came back and work in Qatar for some time, right? A- a- and then
Yeah.
you move to United States to pursue your master's degree, right?
Yeah, exactly. That was kind of the sequence of it, and then I finished my masters, and then just decided to work there.
So let's focus on when you came to US, because I think that's an interesting point of the conversation. You moved to US. Um, what is like to come to US at first? Where were you, and what feelings did you have?
Okay, so yeah, that's actually the best part. I didn't touch that. Sorry, I went on to everyone on the stream. I went rambling about my experience. Might have been all over the place. I still hope you guys got something from it. Oh, there's a big lightning outside. Okay, so I came and landed. My first landing was in So my idea of United States comes from three to four things. One is all the TV shows that I watched, the especially Friends, because that's when that's why I was like, oh, that's the life I want. I want to be able to be with a group of friends, chill in a coffee shop, date beautiful people, and have a good life. That's the Western life that I aspire, and I want to be in New York City. I did get into NYU, but back then the finances was too high, so I just decided to go to UF. Right, so that was one reason I wanted to move to the United States, and that was my idea of United States. A lot had to do with how the TV show Friends was, and then I used to read a lot of Archie comics. I don't know how many people are familiar with it. Archie, Riverdale Community High School. I don't know. So I used to read a lot of that, and I'm a huge nerd for comic books, right? And the Hollywood movies. So this is what America is made of, right? So I thought everything in America is either New York or LA, right? Like Florida is not in the picture, right? And I did not know what Miami was or what people are supposed to look like. And the first time that I landed in Miami airport was that I first landed in the United States, right? And as I'm landing, I can see the tall buildings, awesome infrastructure, but people were not speaking English, and I was like, wait, okay, okay, right. So I was like, why is everyone speaking? What's that? Oh, Spanish? Why is everyone speaking Spanish? Right. And then I was like, it took me and I kept asking questions, and I understood about the community in South Florida and like how there is a huge influence from South America and Cuba, and Cuban community that lives there, and how it has a lot of Spanish influence, and hence a lot of Spanish speaking people. And I easily blend in, like, because whenever I go to Miami, they speak to me in Spanish, and I'm like, oh, no hablo español, and then I had to, get speaking in English. But then I caught my next flight, went to Gainesville, and this blew my mind, man. I walked into the university. It was like the size of a country. I know you've been to the University of Florida, and I'm like, this is what universities are supposed to be like, huh? And I was talking to you about how I kind of spoke about how things were in India with and here I have all the luxury, right? I have a huge room to myself. I am living in an apartment with a kitchen, like full running water, hot water, a lot of restaurants outside, and it was just great. And even if you look at um, how people were interacting, the social life, everything, right? It was, for me, it felt like I was in a movie that I used to see as I was a kid. Right? I'm seeing people chill in coffee shops. I'm seeing students, study together and I used to be so fascinated by that. But for a long time, I was kind of outside that group. I was just a viewer, right? Like I was still shy to go and talk to American people or like be friends with them. I'd be like, oh, what if they don't like me, or like what if I'm too awkward, or if I'm not able to speak with them, what if they think that I'm stupid? I had that something pulling me back from doing it. Uh, but once I broke that barrier, once I made friends, and it was the best thing. But there was a lot of things in America that blew my mind. One example that I would give was I was so as an Indian, I roll my R. When I say, I know over here you don't roll the R, so it's like very R, something like that.
Mhm.
And I went to Publix, which is like a grocery store, and which you find in Southeast United States. If there's anybody outside Southeast United States, I wanted to make that clear about Publix. And I was like, oh, where can I find butter with the R rolled? And the guy was like, what? What are you looking for again? I said, butter. And it's like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. I was like, you have it, you take a bread, you toast it, and then you put some butter on top of it. I was like, oh, butter. And then he's like, okay. And then he goes and shows me that. I'm like, okay, I'll make sure not to roll my R's again. Right. And the next part, like bread, right? I go and I'm like staring at this. In India, you say bread, there is one kind of bread, right? And then they give you the bread, and you're like, thank you. You pay, and you walk away. Over here, it's like like 25 different kinds of bread, right? And I'm like, why do you need so much? Like, it's so difficult what to choose. Why is this bread different from that bread, right? Then I go to the milk section. You have 1% fat, 2% fat, 3% fat. And I'm like, you know that the difference is only 1%, right? Like, why the variety? Why the variety, right? Yeah. So it was the choices, man. I feel that excess is what America is all about, right? Like free, like you want freedom, you want choice. Here you go. Here's 1,000 choices for you.
Because you know somebody's going to sue them for not having 2% milk.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And then the company in the store will have to pay
Yeah,
money for not
right.
having 2% milk because whole milk is not is not enough. So
Exactly. Yeah.
then they're going to create 2%. You probably can find 2.5% milk nowadays.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like at 1%, they'll be like, oh, they'll sell milk as water. I don't know where it's gonna go. It's like,
Soy
but
milk, almond milk, coconut milk. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. When I was even that, like, recently I've been me and my wife have been trying to go kind of lactose free, and even the choices of milk alternates, right? Every nut out there you can milk apparently. So it's like there's cashew milk, almond milk, soy milk, oat milk. It's crazy, but I love those choices. That's what America is all about, I guess.
So you in America, you loved your new life, the freedom, your big apartment with kitchen, all the milk choices at the grocery store.
And the
Um,
beer choices.
yeah, all the beer choices. Maybe you were surprised by inability of some people to understand you because of a subtle language, not language, subtle difference in pronunciation that you had.
Right.
Um, what have been some of the big ticket items, so to speak? Like, were there any, feelings like, oh my gosh, like I love it here, or oh my gosh, I miss home, or was there any epiphanies that you've had, like, about the country, once you spend a little bit of time in the US?
I mean, all in all, I absolutely love my life here. Right, I'm having a great time. We're in the same friend circle, so you know that I'm having a good time over here. At the same time, there is a lot of difficulties that I face, which has to do with the immigration laws of the country. I don't want to get into too much details of that because I don't want this conversation to be about that. But America has immigration laws for lawful immigration to the United States that hasn't changed for a very long time. It hasn't
Hmm.
changed for over 30 or 40 years, and a lot of immigrants that come in from India and China has to face a lot of consequences because of that. Because, for example, my wife, who is here as my dependent, is not able to work in the United States. She cannot get a social security,
Hmm.
so she cannot work. And she's a highly qualified doctor from India. For
Hmm.
somebody who used to be that busy, uh, not being able to work has been pretty stressful for me and my relationship with my wife. But we've found ways to work around it. She decided that she'll try to join a university and go the student route to start working in America. So there are a few things which obviously, no country is perfect, right? For me, my personal opinion in America is pretty, you know, uh, even though no country is perfect, America has done a great job at trying to be perfect or trying to fix its own issues. And I guess this is one of those laws that eventually will get fixed. But for a long time, since it's a very immigration is a very bipartisan issue in the United States, right? What the left says, the right doesn't like. What the right says, the left doesn't like. And it becomes a tug of war, and nothing changes. And it just has been going like that for so many years. And so since the tech revolution in America or the Silicon Valley, a lot of immigrants has been trying to pour in from India and China because we produce a large number of engineers. So a lot of those engineers have been moving to America to fill in these tech positions. And America has a cap on the number of green cards that can be given to, or there is a quota that you can give to each country, right? You can't give if there are 175,000 green cards that can be given each year, no country can get more than 7% of it, right? But there is almost 400,000 people who apply for green cards every year, and a vast majority of that is from India and China. So our 7% gets filled very fast, and the rest of the people go into a waiting, and that waiting gets backlogged year after year. And now my company has applied for my green card. Just to give you a context, my green card won't become active at least for another 25 to 30 years. That's the waiting that I have to get on my
Mm.
green card. And this is like, an issue that, there is way to work around it, but it creates a lot of stress in your life of your wife not being able to work, or you not being able to switch jobs, or you not being able to do any other work outside your job. It comes with some of the problems, but at the same time, like, I'm hopeful that this country will understand, and there are legal avenues on how these laws can be changed. It is a little slow when it comes to immigration, but I'm hopeful things will change for the good.
Joe had a question. Did you meet your wife in Qatar or India?
Okay, so I think I think I don't know how many people are familiar with arranged marriages. So, me and my wife had a semi-arranged marriage situation where we met online. I was in the United States and she was in India. We met online on Facebook, and then we talked for a long time, and we fell in love. And then we talked to our parents about it, and then in India, there is, our parents are still from a very conservative society, so we need their approval. And then, we had to go back to our parents, tell them about, how we met and how we are interested in each other, and then they go through, okay, what does this guy do? Or my parents think about, what does this girl do? And they do their background checks and they get their approval. So once I got their approval, I traveled back to India. I met her. I was there with her for a week, and then we decided that we would get married. And I think 1 year after I got engaged, I went back again to get married, and then I brought her back to the United States. I know arranged marriage might be a strange concept to a lot of people in the United States, but it worked out for me. So I don't know. I'm not a huge proponent of it. I don't support it. I think people should know my previous dating life before I met my current wife was the same as how you would do in the United States, right? Like, you would date somebody, see if you click. If you click, you keep dating and see then if you want to get married. Um, I mean, there's difference. There's difference in the way dating life works in India and Middle East versus how it's in the United States. But with my wife, arranged marriage worked for me. But up until that point, I was against it. It I found it ridiculous that you could just get married to a person that you haven't met or you haven't been with. And but I don't know what to say. I still don't support it, but it worked out for me.
So, have you dated um, someone in India prior to your marriage? Have you been able to date in India in the United States?
um, Yes, I did date briefly in the United States. For me, it probably did not work out very well. To be honest with you, it has nothing to do with because I was dating an American or something. But the brief, so I had just gotten off a pretty long relationship with my ex girlfriend back in India. We were in a relationship almost 5.5 years, right? So, and then at once we broke up, and then I was still recovering from the breakup, and then I moved to the United States. I was looking for a fresh start, and when I was trying to enter the dating pool, right, like I was probably about 25, 26, and I had invested like 5 to 6 years of my life in a previous relationship, and all I could think about was like, oh gosh, I don't want to invest another 5 to 6 years, right? So every time I go on a date, I'll be like, if I don't instantly click, I'm like, yeah, no, and then it doesn't work out. Then yeah, I'm not like like a playboy or a good looking guy or anything. I'm no in by no means somebody who has been with a lot of women. I've only been with, very few. But I've been on some dates where at that point of my life, when I was 26, I was like, I just need to be really sure that this is the person that I want to be with. And there was also an aspect about, if I really do want to be with that person, it has to be somebody that my parents would approve, right? Um, I don't think that was the right approach. I shouldn't have been thinking about what my parents would think of somebody. That's totally the wrong approach, but at least that's where my mind was at that point of time. I was still learning the culture, right? And so the so whenever I started going out with somebody, even if it was a few weeks, I always saw them, and this is shame on me. Like, there was some amount of fact that I was trying to use that as a rebound. And I would just tell myself, my conscience, that, okay, I shouldn't be doing this, and I would break it off. And then briefly, I dated somebody for a few months, but then that just for same reason, like, after a few months of dating, we clicked, we had some good times. A few months of dating, we realized that, okay, yeah, we clicked in some levels, but we for the most part, there was not a lot of common between us, right? And only for that reason, I broke up, and then my wife came into the picture. And even if it was online, I just loved speaking with her. Even if it was just phone calls, we just instantly clicked. And
Hmm.
then and I was it was not like a rebound anymore. I was genuinely interested in this new person, right? And then I just once that clicked, then you don't have the urge to go around looking for anything else, right? I just, our friendship grew to a point that I started having feelings for her. And then we decided that, hey, maybe this is something worth looking into. And then we moved the traditional way of how do I say it, getting married as an Indian citizen. So, see another question from Eunice the World. Like, I think it says, most Indian people I know became citizens. Seems like it's easier to become a citizen than deal with green card, etc. Seems strange to me. So Eunice, so this is a more recent issue, right? Like, the backlog. So if you look at younger people, or people my age, or people who are coming in, those are the people who face that issue. Back, if you look at people who applied for their green cards back in 2000s or 2001, 2002, that era, there was not as much as people coming in from India to get those green cards. So there was not that many people moving into United States to apply for those green cards. So that 7% cap that I talked about wasn't being met. But once the internet revolution, the tech revolution, and Silicon Valley really picked up, a lot of Indians started coming in. So I know one of my colleagues, he applied in 2009, and he got his green card last year. So it's more of a recent issue, and I can see why, a lot of the people, or Indian people that you see now, they've already probably been in the United States for a long time, and back then in the 2000s or in the 1990s, this was not an issue. And the law back then, worked just as well. But now, when we have a lot of immigrants coming in from these two countries, I think it's people who are newer to America, like me, or people who joined with me, that has this issue. But I completely understand your question. That's a very valid point, Eunice. Am I saying that right, Yuri? Is that how you pronounce the name?
I think it's Yvonne.
Oh, Yvonne. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. I'm sorry.
No, it's no worries. So another one from Sam. Did your wife know that she would not be able to work in the USA?
Yes, she knew that it was going to be a struggle. We had talked about it even before we were getting married. We had talked about the struggle, about not being able to work. But there are few immigration leeways for her to get to work, and I've been working on it. And I think if everything works out, she might be able to start working by the beginning of next year. Fingers crossed. I hope I have all your prayers. But she knew about that, but she wasn't prepared for how it was going to affect her, right? The initial thought was that she would come here, she would get her license, she would have to redo her residency, It would take her almost 5 to 6 years to work as a doctor in the US. After, even though she's done all that courses, she would have to do that. And she was like, I'm not going to do that. She doesn't. She's like, I'm not going to work another study and struggle for another, because being a doctor as it is hard enough in any
Mm-hmm.
country, and then having to go through all those years.
Yes.
She's like, yep, don't want to do that. And she decided to do her masters, and our idea was that, okay, you go to school, try to do your masters. By the time you graduate, I can work with the lawyer in my company to find a way to get a work visa for you, and that's what I'm working on. I'm pretty close. If everything works out, probably by the end of this year, she should be able to start working, and things would be a lot better.
Very nice. Very nice. All right. So, question about marriage from me. Before you got married, what do you thought marriage was, and what do you think about marriage now?
Yeah, that's such a great question. It's whatever you think marriage is before you getting married, it's not what it is. It's the easiest way to explain it. It's there is a huge um, realization that you have where you have to stop thinking about I myself and start thinking as we, right? And everything that you can do could have a consequence on your partner, and vice versa. It doesn't. I'm not saying from just from man to women. It could be the other way as well, or man to man, however the couple is. Uh, the and that was hard on me for some time, and I would say even me and my wife had that conversation where choices that you make, things that you want to do, uh, you always have to think about the other person, right? Even if it's like for me, even legally, if I want to switch jobs right now, it has to. I have to go through a legal process, which could, maybe affect my wife's potential opportunity to start working. So even that, I have to think about my wife, right? And that responsibility comes with marriage, right? If I want to get an apartment in a certain area, I need to have another person's opinion about it. If I want to get a certain type of, let's say, bread or milk, I need to have another person's opinion about it, right? My wife is as she tries to eat gluten free, lactose free, so you have to make conscious decisions incorporating the other person into their life, right? And when 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 you can do that without effort, when you can kind of mend and gel your way to work together and accommodate each other in an effortless way, I think that would be the definition of a good marriage. When you think all those things that you do is too much effort and sacrifice, and you start counting points for it, that's when you have troubles in your marriage. Like, oh, I did this for you, why didn't you do that for me? That's when it becomes an effort, right? And I've had both. I've had stuff where I really felt like I was giving up something, and that I was owed something in return. And I've had times where I was like I didn't even feel like it was an effort. Like, I didn't even feel like I was doing something for my wife. I was just, that's I just like, this is what I want to do for my partner to keep her happy, right? So marriage life definitely had its own growing pains on me and my wife, but it's how much you want to struggle to keep it happy, or how much effort you want to put to it. And everything is like that, right? Like any product that you want to make, the more effort you put into it, you get a quality product at the end of it, right? And marriage is no different, right? You put your effort, hard work, dedication to it, you get a happy marriage out of it. But you don't you will never be prepared for that before you get married, because you don't know what you're getting into, right? So it just has to be learned with patience and effort. That's my take on it.
Yvonne said, what are the positives and negatives coming from a much more traditional society do you find with dating in the USA versus dating in India or Qatar?
Yeah. So That's a great question. Like when I was growing up in Qatar, it was still a very traditional and conservative society. So dating was not so prevalent. I would have crushes on a lot of my schoolmates, but there was nothing you could do about it. And there were some people might call me out saying that no, people used to date. Yes, people still used to date in those conservative societies, like secretive dating. Like you would find a way to go meet somebody, and then you would most of it would be long phone calls over the night. But openly dating was not prevalent when I was growing up in the Middle East, in at least in Qatar. Uh, Even now, there are rules in the Middle East where two unmarried people cannot stay together in an apartment. You have to be married to get an apartment together, right? So but even though laws haven't changed, people have opened up to it, right? People are openly dating. You cycle through different partners before you choose the right partner. But at least when I was growing up, I didn't have much of a dating life. The dating was for like the top echelon of people in my school. They would have girlfriends, and we used to admire those guys or girls. Oh gosh, you guys got a date in school, so for me, I have not a lot to speak about dating in the Middle East. It was not prevalent when I was out there. There was not much of a dating scene back then, except for, I would say, few percentage of the students or people back then. And in when I moved to India, dating was a little different, because in India, yes, people have a lot of relationships, but it was not a similar dating culture as like the West. In India, like you meet somebody, you fall in love, and you immediately think about your future life together, or getting married. At least back then, I'm talking about 2008. I think when I had my first girlfriend, I was like, oh wow, first girlfriend, this is freaking awesome. I want to get married to this person, right? That's how I thought. And then but then things don't work out, and then I had my second girlfriend, same thought. I want to imagine my future with you, like but and that's so in I think in United States, I was talking to one of my American friends, and he was like, oh, we're having this stupid guy talk, and it's like, oh, how many uh, people have you been with? And I had an embarrassingly low number, and I wasn't like super embarrassed about it. And then he's like, "What? I've had so many girlfriends, and everybody was yeah. I had, I've been on like with I've been in three serious relationships, four like time pass relationships." And I'm like, "Wow, it's so different. Like the amount of partners that you cycle through in Western or European societies versus in India. Now things have changed. Now things have really changed. And now I know, like my sister is 18. Like I don't I'm, I'm not privy to everything in her dating life, but at least I know the culture right now, which is very westernized. Just like this, people want to try out different people, date different people, then understand what's best for them, and then choose the right partner. But back then, I think it was different. Like you meet a person, and then you immediately think, oh, is she going to be a good wife? Is this who I want to be with? And you get into long relationships, and you don't really cycle through as many partners as you would in US or in Europe. But in so I hope that answers your question. Just to recap, in the Middle East, dating scene still has a lot to develop, and it's not very prevalent, at least within the South Asian community that I was in. In India, people date, people fall in love, but it's it's you, maybe you're with one or two partners before you get married. Uh, if lucky, some people just directly get arranged marriage, never date their entire life. I'd say was maybe at least 30-40% of Indians don't even get to date. They just directly get married to somebody who their parents choose. And there is another 60% of it, like myself, who get to date like maybe two or three people and then get arranged marriage. And there are other people who date and marry the person that they date, like if they find, they go with that. But again, things are fast changing in both of these countries. They are very influenced by the Western cultures, and they and just like everything else that they want to embrace, dating life is also something that I think they're trying to embrace from, you know, European and Western culture, and they like the idea of dating and getting to know a person, and if it doesn't work out, they try dating somebody else, and they're trying to switch that culture up, I guess.
I know you mentioned it in the beginning of our talk, but looks like Joe is asking what part of India you're from.
I am from the southern part. It's a state called Kerala. That's Kerala, Kerala. That's where I'm from. I've only stayed there for. It's a beautiful state. If anyone wants to go visit, it's very tropical. It's pretty similar to, I would say, like a Floridian climate, and it's beautiful. You guys should check it out. Um, it has a huge tourism community from Europe and the Americas. So it's pretty cool.
Very nice. Yeah, I would love to visit one day, man. My friend, I
I was
think
just
I think we this been an interesting conversation. I don't want to keep you here all day. I guess my final question would be, what's the best part about being an immigrant, and what is the worst part about being an immigrant, specifically coming from having experiences that you have had, being in Qatar, then being in India, then living in the United States. If you're looking at the entire timeline and all the things that have transpired, what have been the best thing, what has been the worst?
um, hmm, never thought about it that way, but best part about being immigrant. I mean, as the word immigrant, as in like,
I'm
um,
asking. I'm asking about your experience in
yeah,
particular.
okay.
I said word immigrant just to obviously emphasize that you did have experience in other country and you came to United States as a first gen immigrant. But I'm really more interested to know from your perspective. Experience in three countries and now being in the United States. What has been the best part of this journey of yours so far? And then I guess what has been the most challenging one?
Okay, I'll try to answer it this way. Because when you're an immigrant, like I'm an immigrant in the United States, a country that I love being part of, right? Like I love everything about this country, even the quirks that it needs to fix. But I love being here, and I miss the fact that I am not a citizen, right? So every time I feel like, oh gosh, I wish I was a citizen. So I don't probably necessarily like the fact that I am an immigrant over here, but I am thankful that this country has an immigration process that gave somebody like me, all the way on the other side of the earth, to come here and try to follow my dreams and live my passion and live freely, understand the progressive world, understand what America has learned through 250 years of its history. So I'm thankful for the opportunity that it gave me to become an immigrant in the United States. That's the good part about it, and the part about it is that I'm not a citizen yet. It's I'm not complaining. I just wish that I was part of this great country more than an immigrant. That's all.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
Anything regarding the most challenging part?
Challenging part has been the immigration laws, which I kind of dwelled into.
Okay, okay.
That's
That
been.
was sneaky, man. That seemed like a setup for a good part, but I see what you did.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
So that's what it was. But yeah, yeah. All in all, very thankful to be in this country, being with this great people. Even this, like having to have this conversation with you, speaking to these people online, being a part of, briefly being a part of your channel. I That's just beautiful. Like all these great people, asking me questions. Uh, I don't know if I would have had this experience anywhere else. So thank you for this. Thank you for this opportunity. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I enjoyed the questions, and thank you everyone online.
Hold on, my mom. My mom is literally to my window, so I'm gonna close my window so I can't tell if you can hear her or not. Hold on. Actually, just walked away, but she literally came to the window and started speaking Russian. We don't want YouTube to stop our broadcast.
Yeah.
My friend, I feel similarly. I am thankful for a lot of things. I really am, and I try not to take it for granted. I really appreciate the conversation. It's really refreshing to speak with someone who has appreciation, and who can kind of have this fresh perspective coming from another place and being able to. She's there again. Can you hear anything? Can you hear like
No,
noise?
no, I guess no, I can't hear anything. It's still clear.
He has my uncle on the speaker, and it's like super loud, and I can hear that she does something with the flowers. Anyway, she just keeps like going back and forth as if like the flower's not good enough. So she like corrected it, but then she comes back like because it's not up to her standard. She keeps correcting it, and I keep hearing her
Uh,
and my uncle. That's funny. Um, no, but I resonate with what you said because I think of my life and how it would play out if I was in Russia right now, and the situation right now there is very dramatic and very terrible for many people. So like I think about it at times. Would I even still be alive? Or would I be in the military and would it be end up like dying in war or whatever? You just never know. And so being in here in the United States, being free, having all the benefits that this country has to offer, I think it means a lot. And it means a lot when you start reflecting on it and start seeing and being aware of what's going on in other places in the world.
right.
And so I feel very similarly. I feel very similarly because I think in the past I've gotten to a point where I fell into this period of time where I was taking it for granted. And it's easiest thing to do to forget. It's easiest thing to do to say, "Oh, this how things supposed to be."
Hmm.
But a lot of people would die to be in our place, to be
Right.
here and to have a job and to have a place and to have cars and to be able to go to the store and buy 2% milk
Mm.
or 20 other types of milks that they have, right? So it's
Yeah.
it's an interesting thing to do to reflect on these things because on one hand you can get to the point where you can start sort of like looking at it as a detriment, but on another hand it's like, dang, there are so many blessings, right?
Right.
So many blessings. um so I think a lot of it is a matter of perception, and I do believe that reflection and gratitude are really really important. I know that my community appreciated your perspective. I saw a couple of comments on there, so they thanking
Thank you.
you. And then so for my behalf, I also really enjoy the conversation. So I thank you for taking the time and sharing your um, just your experiences with us and being open and transparent about it. It was very interesting for me personally to learn more about your upbringing and how you navigated your life and how you got to this point. So thank you so much for taking the time. I hope it's not the last time, and have a wonderful day, my friend.
All right. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to kind of engage with your community. I love the platform, so thank you guys. Thank you. Hope you all have a awesome rest of the Sunday.
Thank you as well, my friend. Take care.
All right. See you guys.
Bye. Well, another great conversation in not in the works, but in the what they say. That's the beautiful part about being an immigrant with the second uh with using English language as your second language. Sometimes you start a sentence and then forget. In the works, not in the works. In the another great conversation in the some of you probably know what I try to say. In the books. Oh, these stupid English, freaking stupid English expressions, and I try to pull them in the books. That's right. Well, I thought about it, but it was a little too late. I appreciate it. I appreciate your comments. Looks like Felicia joined as well. Um, appreciate your nice words and your questions and your participation. Always, always great to have you all here. Let's see. Next week, we're going to have a live talk on Saturday. I'll be traveling on Sunday, so I'm going to move it up one day, June 25th, and we'll do it at 12 p.m. Eastern. Topic to be announced. I didn't have anything prepared to announce it today, but I'm going to be posting some things again on the community tab on my YouTube channel. And as well as, I always open to your comments from my members. If you're on Discord, please send some of the suggestions and we can go from there. But that being said, my friends, let's just thank to folks who joined us today. Joe was here and had great questions, great interaction. Thank you for that. Lindsay was here. Thank you for hanging out. Sam was here and asking great questions as well. Thank you so much. Yvonne was here. Thank you so much for your time and attention and your participation. Daphne was here. Thank you so much. Felicia joined. I know there were some other folks in here. Janina, I hope that's how you pronounce it. Thank you for hanging out. I know Heather was here earlier. And I think there were Becky stopped by. So thank you to every single one of you, okay? I am super excited that you had the opportunity to listen to Farhan and I talk. And I wish you all an amazing rest of this Sunday, okay? I'll be seeing you soon, my friends. Much, much love. Peace.